She opened the door in just a t-shirt and said, "Come in, I'm alone." They say life is made up of small moments, but I never thought one of those moments would change how I saw everything, including myself. I'm Ethan, 22, college student, a guy who usually stays in the background unnoticed. Not because I try to, but because I don't push to be seen. I always believed in playing it safe, in not stepping over lines, not stirring the water. My life up until that day was a quiet one. Safe. Predictable. Until I rang a doorbell I'd pressed a dozen times before, but this time, everything felt different. It was Zach's house. He was my best friend. We were working on a class project, and he told me to drop by even if he wasn't home yet. His mom would let me in. Simple. Familiar. Nothing to think about. But when that door swung open and it wasn't Zach standing there but his mom, Melissa, something shifted. She wasn't done up. No makeup, hair tied back messily. Just a white t-shirt that hung just long enough to leave too much to the imagination. And then she said it with a kind of casual softness I wasn't prepared for. "Come in, I'm alone." It wasn't flirtatious. It wasn't loaded. But those words, they branded themselves in my brain. My pulse spiked, not because I expected anything to happen, but because something already had in me, something I couldn't undo. What followed wasn't some over-the-top seduction. There were no sweeping gestures or forbidden declarations. It was quiet, subtle, a shift in atmosphere, the kind of change that can only be felt between words in the silence in a glance held too long. We sat. We talked. We shared iced tea and laughter. For 40 minutes, she wasn't Zach's mom. She was a woman who looked tired and alive and present, someone who listened, someone who saw me not as a boy or a guest, but as a person. And just like that, I couldn't unsee her either. I didn't know what to call what was forming between us. I didn't even know if it was real. But as I sat on that couch beside her, watching an old black-and-white film flicker across the TV, I knew one thing: I had just stepped into a moment that would follow me for a long time. And she knew it too. After that first moment, after she opened the door in just a long t-shirt and said those words, "Come in." I'm alone, everything started to change. Not drastically. Not like some movie where everything spirals immediately. But slowly. In the way quiet things do when they start taking root. I kept telling myself it didn't mean anything, that Melissa was just being casual, that I was reading too much into her body language, her tone, the look in her eyes. But it wasn't just that first day. It was what came after. Zach started texting less about the project and more about hanging out with his girlfriend. That left me doing most of the work, which meant more visits to his place, more just drop by and grab it from my desk texts, and more moments alone with Melissa. The second time I came over, it was early evening. She answered the door in yoga pants and a tank top, her hair in a messy bun, a smudge of flour on her cheek. She'd been baking, the scent of warm cinnamon and something buttery wrapped around me the second I stepped inside. "You're early," she said with a smile that felt like it was just for me. "Hope you're hungry." She handed me a warm muffin before I could even take off my shoes. We sat at the kitchen island again like we had before. This time it felt less accidental, like we both knew we were towing the edge of something but pretending not to. "So how's the presentation going?" she asked, leaning in, a little elbows on the counter. "Pretty good. I think Zach's gonna wing his part like always." I laughed. She rolled her eyes. "Figures." And then she said something that surprised me. "You've always been more focused than him. He's lucky to have you around." I looked at her. Not just looked, watched. The curve of her jaw, the faint freckles across her cheekbones, the way her lips pursed when she sipped her coffee. There was something effortless about her presence, something real. And in that moment, she didn't feel like Zach's mom. She felt like a woman who was watching me just as closely. From that point forward, I started noticing the details, how she always offered me something to drink, how her outfits changed depending on the day, sometimes casual, sometimes just a little too comfortable, how her voice got softer when we were alone, how she laughed just a little longer at my jokes. It wasn't always flirting, it wasn't even always obvious, but the current was there, and I didn't stop it. One afternoon, I came by to return a flash drive. Zach was supposed to be there, but when I knocked, it was Melissa who opened the door. She wore an oversized sweater that fell off one shoulder and leggings. No shoes. She looked tired, but stunning. He ran out to get food, she said. He'll be back in 20. I almost said I'd come back later. I almost turned and walked away. But I didn't. Mind if I wait? I asked instead. She stepped aside. We sat on the couch, not far apart, but not close. She handed me a mug of something warm. Her fingers grazed mine when she did. We talked. Just talked. About everything, how she used to play guitar before she became a mom, how she once thought she'd be an artist, how she sometimes wondered where her 20s went. I told her about my parents, how my dad still didn't get why I didn't want to do construction like him, how I felt like I was pretending to be okay with life when really I had no idea what I was doing. She nodded slowly. I felt like that for years, she said. Still do sometimes, and then without even realizing it we were closer, not touching but leaning in, like gravity was nudging us toward something we weren't allowed to name. I'm sorry if this is weird, I said finally. It is weird, she replied softly, but that doesn't make it wrong. Then silence. Not awkward, not heavy, just quiet. Her eyes lingered on mine a second too long. I didn't kiss her. She didn't kiss me. But something passed between us in that stillness, a decision neither of us made but also didn't undo. From then on, our meetings became something else, subtle, intentional. She'd invite me in when Zach wasn't around, saying things like, "You hungry?" or "Stay a while, you look tired." Her touch became casual, like brushing a crumb off my sleeve or squeezing my shoulder when she laughed. And I found myself doing little things too, complimenting her new hairstyle, asking about the songs she played in the background, lingering longer than I needed to. Every visit added another layer. One time I was helping her carry groceries from the car, and she reached up to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear, something so simple but so intimate it made me freeze. Our eyes locked. I couldn't move. She didn't step back. She just held that gaze for what felt like forever. Then she smiled. "You should have been born 10 years earlier," she whispered, almost too low to hear. I didn't answer. I couldn't. And I didn't need to. From that moment on, everything changed again. We never talked about what was happening. There were no confessions, no declarations, just more moments that blurred the line between innocent and not, like when I was helping her fix a drawer in the kitchen and she stood just a little too close behind me, her breath warm on my neck. Or when she asked me to stay for dinner and we ended up sitting at the table, candlelight flickering, talking like we were the only two people in the world. Or when she leaned in one evening, eyes glassy from a second glass of wine, and said, "You make me feel seen." I didn't think anyone could still do that. I didn't know how to respond, so I just said the truth. "You make me feel the same." The air between us was electric, charged. But we still hadn't crossed the line. Not yet. And that was almost worse, knowing something was coming and not knowing when. A week later it happened. Late evening. I came by to pick up a textbook Zach said he'd left for me. Melissa answered the door. Her hair was damp. She wore that long t-shirt again, barefoot, eyes tired, voice soft. "You okay?" I asked. She shrugged. "Long day." Then she stepped aside. I walked in, and she closed the door behind me. We stood there for a moment, neither moving. Then she whispered, "Do you want to sit?" I nodded. We sat. Same couch. Same distance. But the space between us didn't feel safe anymore. It felt alive. She turned to me slowly. "I think about you," she said, "more than I should." My heart pounded. "I think about you too." She looked down, hands clasped. "This isn't fair to you." "It's not about fair," I replied. "It's about what's real." She looked at me again. And this time we didn't stop it. She reached for me. I met her halfway. And the line vanished. That night changed everything. The tension that had been simmering between us for weeks finally broke, and in the softest, quietest way. No fireworks, no dramatic declarations, just the simple fact of two people who had been trying not to want something finally giving in. After the kiss, we didn't rush into anything physical. It wasn't about that. We just sat on the couch closer than before. Her head eventually rested on my shoulder. My arm slipped naturally around her waist. We didn't speak for a long time. The room was still the TV screen flickering with muted light neither of us was watching. Outside, the wind picked up. "You should probably go," she said, eventually, not looking at me. "Yeah," I whispered, but I didn't move. "I mean it, Ethan. It complicates everything." I nodded slowly and stood up. She followed me to the door barefoot, as always, arms crossed like she was holding herself together. I turned to say goodnight, but she beat me to it. "Don't tell him," she said. Not angry, not afraid, just firm. "I won't," I replied. "Ever." She gave me the smallest nod, then opened the door. I stepped into the cool night air and didn't look back. The next few days were strange. I kept thinking it would feel like guilt, like I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. But that wasn't it. What I felt was weight-heavy, electric, exciting weight. Melissa didn't text. She didn't call. Neither did I. But the silence felt intentional, like we both needed time to breathe. Still, I couldn't stop thinking about her. The way she looked at me when she said, "You make me feel seen." The way her fingers had trembled when they touched mine. The kiss. I replayed it over and over in my head. Zach was still oblivious. He and I worked on our class project like normal. He joked, laughed, made dumb comments about girls on campus. I nodded, smiled, went along with it. But I wasn't really there. Not fully. I couldn't be. Not after what had happened. A week later, Zach texted and said he'd be at a study group all afternoon. I didn't plan on going over, but I did. I didn't even knock this time. Melissa opened the door like she'd been waiting for me. She was in the same long t-shirt, hair down, no makeup, barefoot. She didn't say hello, just opened the door wider and let me in. We didn't speak. Not at first. She led me to the kitchen, poured us both glasses of water, then leaned against the counter and stared at me. "This isn't going to work," she said. I knew she didn't mean us. She meant the silence, the pretending. "Then what do we do?" I asked. "I don't know." She looked exhausted, not physically, emotionally, like she'd been wrestling with this every second since I left. I stepped closer. "You said it mattered to you," I said. "Was that true?" She nodded. "Yes." "Then let it matter." She stared at me, and for the first time I saw fear in her eyes. Not of me, but of herself. "I don't know how to want something for myself anymore, Ethan. I didn't have the perfect answer. I didn't try to fix it. I just said the truest thing I could." "Then let me help you remember." Her eyes welled up just a little. And then she reached for my hand. This time, we didn't hold back. That afternoon was a blur of skin and breath and quiet moans muffled against each other's mouths. We moved with hesitation, with care, like we were both afraid we'd wake up and realize it wasn't real. But it was. And when it was over, we lay there on the couch, tangled under the same blanket we'd once shared in silence, the afternoon light spilling across the floor like gold. Her head was on my chest. My hand traced slow circles along her back. "I haven't been touched like that in years," she whispered. I didn't know what to say, so I just held her tighter. Later, as I dressed to leave, she sat on the edge of the couch, knees pulled up to her chest. "This isn't just a thing for you, is it?" she asked. "No," I said quickly. "It's not." She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath. "Good." What followed was a strange new rhythm. We never called it anything. We didn't say dating. We didn't say secret. We just were. Every time Zach had a late shift or left town to see his dad or crashed at a friend's place, I'd find myself drifting back to her door. And every time she'd answer like she already knew I was coming. Sometimes we talked for hours before even touching each other. Other times it was instant, urgent, like we couldn't wait. She made me coffee and eggs in the morning, once still wearing only my t-shirt. I kissed the back of her neck while she stood at the stove. She laughed, really laughed. You're gonna ruin me, Ethan. I smiled. You say that like it's a bad thing. She shook her head. No, it's not. But not every moment was golden. There were hard ones, too. Like the day I came over and found her crying at the kitchen table. What happened? I asked, kneeling beside her. She shook her head. Nothing. Everything. I don't know. I didn't push. I just sat with her, held her hand, and let her fall apart. That's what it became, more than physical, more than escape. It became real. But with every stolen moment, the truth loomed larger. Zach didn't know. Couldn't know. Melissa was his mother, and I was his best friend. It was only a matter of time before it broke. And we both knew it. The last week of the semester, Zach and I were working on our final presentation in the school library. He leaned back in his chair and said, "You ever think about how weird it is that my mom actually likes you?" I froze. "What do you mean?" He shrugged. "I don't know. She's usually cold around my friends. But with you, she actually seems happy when you're around." I forced a smile. "Maybe she just likes my taste in iced tea." Zach laughed and dropped the topic, but it rattled me. He was noticing, not enough to connect the dots, but enough to make my stomach twist. That night, I told Melissa. We lay in her bed, the window cracked, the breeze drifting through the curtains. "I think he's starting to suspect something." She didn't respond right away. Then, "We should stop." I sat up. "Do you want to stop?" "No," she said instantly. "God, no." "Then why?" "Because it's not sustainable," she said quietly. "Eventually we'll get caught, and when that happens, it won't just break him, it'll break us." I stared at the ceiling. "I don't want this to end." She turned toward me, resting her hand on my chest. "Neither do I." But we have to be honest about what this is." I didn't respond. I didn't want to, but I knew she was right. The next day I didn't go over, or the day after that. I avoided her street, kept busy with finals, lost myself in notes and caffeine, and the noise of everything that wasn't her. But my heart wasn't in any of it, and I knew she was feeling it too. One night, around 11 p.m., I got a text. From Melissa. "If this is the end, I just need to see you one more time." Her message lit up my phone like a match in a dark room. I stared at the screen for almost a full minute, heart-thudding thoughts spinning. I knew what it meant. She wasn't just asking to see me. She was asking if we were brave enough to have a real goodbye, one that acknowledged everything we had been, everything we weren't allowed to be. I didn't text back. I just got in the car and drove. It was late, nearly midnight, and the streets were empty. The kind of quiet that made the world feel paused, like something sacred could slip through the cracks unnoticed. When I pulled into the driveway, the porch light was off. But her front door opened before I even reached it. Melissa stood there, silhouetted by the hallway light, barefoot, wearing a soft gray robe, her hair down, eyes tired and red like she'd been crying. Neither of us said a word as I stepped inside. The house was completely still. No music, no TV, just the hum of silence wrapped around us. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wasn't sure I could stay away." She closed the door behind me, locked it slowly, then leaned back against it as if holding herself up. "This has to be the last time, Ethan." I nodded. "I know, but I don't want to waste it pretending." I didn't answer. I just walked toward her, and she met me halfway. We kissed like people who knew every second was borrowed, like we were trying to remember every detail, the taste of each breath, the texture of skin, the quiet sound of surrender. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't desperate. It was something heavier, something grateful. She led me to the bedroom, and for the first time there was no hesitation between us, no pulling away, no pause. We moved like we were already remembering each other, like our bodies understood what our words hadn't dared to say. When it was over, we stayed wrapped together, tangled in sheets and soft lamplight. Her fingers traced circles on my chest. My hand rested at the curve of her back. "It was never just about attraction," she whispered. "You made me feel seen again, like I was still a woman, like I mattered. You do matter." Her eyes found mine, full of sadness and love all at once. I was afraid to feel this way again, afraid of what it meant, but you gave me something I didn't know I needed. I held her tighter. You gave me the same. We lay in silence after that, our breathing in sync hearts, slowly returning to their steady rhythms. I hate that it has to end, she said. Then don't let it. She smiled, but it was a tired smile, the kind that knows better. It has to. Because if it doesn't, we stop being careful, and someone Zach gets hurt. I could survive the guilt, but I couldn't survive hurting my son. The weight of her words sank into me. She was right. We had been careful, quiet, secretive. But secrets don't stay buried forever. The longer this went on, the greater the risk, not just to us, but to the people we cared about. So what now? I asked. We remember it, she said. We remember it for what it was. Not some mistake, not some shameful secret, but something that mattered. Tears welled up in her eyes. Promise me you won't look back and feel ashamed of me. I shook my head. I'll never feel that way. You saved me, Melissa. In 1,000 ways you'll never fully understand. She leaned in, kissed me one last time, slow, full, final. Then she whispered, sleep here tonight. Just tonight. No words, no decisions, just presence. I stayed. We didn't speak again that night. We didn't need to. Morning light crept into the room around 6 a.m. I woke before she did, watched her sleep for a few minutes. She looked peaceful, more peaceful than I'd ever seen her. I wanted to freeze that moment, keep it somewhere in my chest forever. I got up quietly dressed, and before leaving I scribbled a note on the pad by her nightstand. Thank you for seeing me. And I walked out. I didn't go back to that house for a long time. Zach and I still hung out, still worked on projects, but I found ways to keep our meetups elsewhere on campus, in coffee shops at my apartment. It felt safer, cleaner. I saw Melissa once from a distance. She was standing in her driveway, watering her flowers. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did, but pretended not to. Either way, I didn't stop. The following weeks passed in fragments. School kept me busy. I buried myself in classwork, in internship applications, in group projects. Every so often I'd think about texting her just to see if she was okay, but I never did. Instead, I let the silence grow between us. But it wasn't empty. It was full of everything we hadn't said. One afternoon, weeks later, Zach and I were grabbing lunch at a food truck near campus. We were talking about some coding project when he suddenly went quiet, staring down at his drink. What's up? I asked. He didn't look at me when he said it. My mom seems different lately. My stomach clenched. Different how I don't know. Sad, maybe. Tired. Like she's holding something in. I forced a swallow. Have you talked to her about it? She says she's fine. Just work stress. But I know her. Something's off. I nodded, trying to look thoughtful, not guilty. You think she's seeing someone? He asked suddenly. The question hit like a brick. I froze for a half-second too long. I don't know, man. Zach shook his head. It's not that. I'd be fine if it was. Honestly, she deserves someone. She's been alone too long. He took a sip of his drink and added, whoever it is, I just hope he's good to her. I couldn't breathe for a second. Then I nodded. She deserves that. He smiled faintly. She really does. That night I thought about texting her again, but I knew it would only make things harder. So instead, I wrote it all down. Everything we'd been through. Every moment, every kiss. Every time I thought this can't be real, and it was. I wrote it all in a notebook, a private journal. And when I was done, I closed it and tucked it into the back of my closet. Some stories don't need to be shared. Some stories live better in silence. Weeks turned into months, and gradually the ache faded. Not because I stopped caring, but because I let it become what it was always meant to be, a memory. A chapter, a beautiful secret carved into time, untouched by judgment. I started seeing someone new eventually, a girl from one of my classes. She was sweet, funny, grounded. She didn't ask too many questions about my past. And I didn't volunteer anything. One day she asked me why I always carried an old leather notebook in my bag. I smiled. No reason, I said. But I knew the truth. That notebook held the only proof that once, just once, I had stepped across a line I never thought I would, and met someone waiting on the other side. Not a fantasy, not a forbidden cliché, but a woman who looked me in the eyes and said, "You make me feel seen." And for a little while, I did. It's been over a year now since that last morning, the quiet goodbye, the note on her nightstand, the soft click of the front door closing behind me. I don't pass by her house anymore, not because I'm trying to forget her, but because I've already remembered enough. Because there's a difference between letting go and pretending something never mattered. Melissa mattered. She mattered in a way most people won't ever understand and probably shouldn't. What we had wasn't about lust or rebellion or some cliché fantasy. It was about timing. About finding someone when both of you are quietly breaking inside and realizing the other person sees it, doesn't judge it, just sees it. And in a world so quick to dismiss the quiet that meant everything. I still think about the way she smiled sometimes, just the side of her mouth lifting, like she didn't want to give too much away. I still remember how she made her coffee too strong and sipped it like it was a habit she couldn't quit. How she'd fold her legs under her on the couch and talk about old movies like they were church sermons. I never loved her. But I loved who I was when I was with her, real, present, vulnerable. She gave me that. And I hope I gave her something too. Something beyond the thrill of secrecy. Something that whispered, "You're still allowed to feel." People like to package stories like ours into neat little boxes. They want an ending that feels earned. Someone gets hurt, someone gets forgiven, someone moves on. But real life doesn't work that way. Some stories don't end with slamming doors or grand declarations. Some stories just fade. And when they fade, they leave behind a kind of peace you didn't expect. A peace that says, yes, it was messy, yes, it was risky, but it was real. And for that, you'll never be sorry. So if you're watching this and you've ever felt something you weren't supposed to, if you've ever crossed a line you swore you'd never touch, this isn't me justifying it. It's me reminding you, you're human. We break. We blur. We want connection more than we want control. And sometimes the people who save us don't stay. That doesn't make it worthless. It just makes it true. Now it's your turn. Have you ever shared a moment with someone that changed you but no one else ever knew about it? A connection so quiet it never needed to be explained. Drop it in the comments if you're brave enough, or just hit, like if you've carried a secret memory that still makes you smile. And if this story made you feel something even for a moment, subscribe, because here we talk about the truths no one else says out loud. And that's what makes it real.